Hey everybody, it's Lawrence from lawrencelanoff.com. Here today to talk to you about something cool, but first I want to remind you, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure you like the Facebook page, comment on anything I'm talking about. This is a very important discussion and one which you will want to be involved in. So please join me in this. And this came about from a student who asked a question, and I think it's a super important question, one that I think is so important that I decided to speak about it on the subject today. And that is the subject of essentially binaries. Now, you're going to come to find that binaries have everything to do with life, are the way that we think about things, and we tend to think about things in either this or that. And so, of course, that can create a lot of pain, suffering, confusion, stress. I go way more into that in Tantra X, which is my program on deprogramming your mind for men around sexuality. I have the upcoming program for women, Tantra XO, that'll be coming down the road. Keep your eyes open for that. But for today, what's most important that I want to share with you is I want to share with you this idea of binaries and how they affect your life. So in this case behind me, we have two columns, column 1, column 2, and we're going to call each of these columns, you know, this will be like an opposite. So typically we think of pleasure. When we think of pleasure, we go, okay, well, there's an opposite to pleasure. There's an opposite to pleasure. And I'm not even going to say what you know is the opposite to pleasure. I'm just going to leave that to your inner voice. But most of the time we go, oh, the opposite of pleasure is fill in the blank, right? And so what I'm going to invite you to do, that polarity right there causes a ton of confusion, pain, and suffering for people. So what I want you to think about today, this is just starting to think about this. This is a paradigm shift. Paradigm shifts are profound. They affect every area of your life, and they take a while. They're like little seeds that we plant. So we're planting a seed. In this case, the paradigm that I want you to think about is, instead of what you normally think about, what you've been trained by mommy and daddy and who knows who else, I want you to think about that the opposite of pleasure, this will be pleasure, and that the opposite of pleasure, the opposite column over here is, and this is going to sound weird at first, but think about it, that the opposite of pleasure, which is over there, the opposite of pleasure is more pleasure. More pleasure. That's the real opposite of pleasure. So follow me here. So here's my pleasure, and then what's opposite of pleasure? What's on the other side of pleasure is more pleasure. That's the opposite. That's in the opposite of the spectrum of pleasure. The opposite of the spectrum of pleasure is more pleasure, more space, more freedom, more power, more empowerment. So what that means is, if this was originally my pleasure and this becomes more pleasure, the work I've done on myself to feel more, experience more love, more, have more intimacy, more freedom, all of that, if that's what that is, then this becomes my normal. This becomes kind of like I adjust to this, and this becomes my normal experience. And then from there, something super cool happens, which is that this, because it becomes my normal, now the opposite of this pleasure, which was more pleasure but is now kind of my normal pleasure, becomes even more pleasure, more freedom, more spaciousness, more. So I'm now moving into a new combination where now the new pleasure is this new experience of pleasure. So now I make more space. I work on my brain. I release more beliefs. I open my body. I embrace my sexuality. And I have even more pleasure, which is now the opposite again. And so now this like more pleasure becomes my new opposite. And then the new opposite of that is even more pleasure. So the idea here is to keep opening, instead of doing what we've been taught to do, which is essentially move between open, closed, which of course kind of creates a sucky life, honestly, because then you're always bouncing between this and that, and this and that, and this and that. Then you never have the time to experience what you've experienced and then make room for even more, which is what we're talking about today. More pleasure, more freedom, more bliss, more fun. All of that is possible. So think about that today. digest, feel free to comment below. Comment. Let's start a conversation about this. It's a profound thing to think about. Until the next time, this is Lawrence, lawrencelanoff.com. Remember to subscribe, like the page, share it if you like the content. I'm looking for tribal members who are having and wanting to have this discussion. You know what I'm saying? It's time to upgrade our discussion, especially around pleasure and freedom and empowerment and all the things that I love to talk about and experience. Until the next time, I'll see you on the next video. Bye.